Can $250 get you a Lee-Enfield shooter in 2025? Let's crack open this Royal Tiger B-grade and find out. What's up, guys? Readiness Reviews here with you again, and we all know RTI's reputation for shipping out junk, but as we've seen here on the channel, every now and then you can get lucky. It's been nearly a year since I placed an order with them, but when I saw their latest sale offering No.1 Mk.III Lee-Enfields for $250, I couldn't resist rolling the Mk.III dice one more time. This box holds a B-grade example, which means condition is questionable at best, but honestly, that goes for just about everything coming from Royal Tiger Imports Ethiopian Horde. I'm hoping this one's a shooter, but let's get this box open and see what $250 gets you in 2025. It's been right at 2.5 years since I picked up my last B-grade No.1 Enfield example from RTI, and I paid $300 for this one back then. It's pretty surprising that they're offering the same grade rifle for a lesser price here in 2025. I'm very curious to see how these most recent rifles compare to the older ones. Not only was this B-grade a very reasonable $250, but it also had free shipping. If it's even close to the condition of my other rifle, I will be extremely happy. We got a little paper end cap and a bubble wrap rifle. Recently, I think RTI has resulted to parting out their rifles a little bit, because they've been offering C-grade examples without the bolt or without the magazine for a reduced price. These B-grades are supposed to be mostly intact though. Well, mostly intact. We're certainly missing our rear handguard. Oof. And look at that crack in the front handguard. Not exactly getting off to a good start here. Here's their tag, very simply labeled Enfield No.1 Mk.III. So we do have our magazine here with follower, and that seems to be in decent enough condition. The bottom of it does appear to be wire wheeled. We can sort of see those striations and a distinct line between the part that was in the rifle and the part that met the wire wheel. Their import mark is on the receiver here. It is quite small. IO Inc., Melbourne, Florida, No.1 UK 303. The magazine was wire wheeled, but it does not appear that the metal got that treatment because we can actually see a lot of rust on here. It looks to be all original patina, basically. Missing that rear handguard completely once again. Our sight is intact though, with sight wings, barrel band. Front handguard is extremely cracked all the way to the front. We do have our nose cap with all the screws and the front sights included. The condition of the wood for this forestock looks surprisingly good. I mean, sure, it's showing some wear, but there's no major dings and dents or cracks. Not bad looking at all. And I suppose the same goes for the buttstock here. Looks to be in very serviceable shape. We do have our butt plate with screws, our sling loop. We're missing the stock disc, and there has been a couple repairs, one to the toe and one to the top of the buttstock there. Unfortunately, we are missing the majority of the safety assembly. We have a couple pieces there, but it is far from complete. Our cocking knob is missing its screw. Take a look at this bolt. That is a very rough action, and things are looking extremely rusty inside the receiver. Bolt head extractor with extractor spring. The bolt body is certainly rusty, but seems serviceable. And we have an older style cocking knob here. With that bolt knob out of the way, we can get a good look at our manufacturer. This is a BSA produced 1913 dated SMLE. I think that officially makes this the oldest No.1 Enfield in my entire collection now. It does have the older style forestock reinforcement of a simple brass pin. On later examples, they have more substantial reinforcement. These really old style forestocks are notorious for cracking near the back there. We can see the sight wings were simplified. The stock on this 1913 example also has a recess for a magazine cutoff. We don't see that same recess on my 1916 example. So those are pretty cool older features to have on a No.1 Enfield. It makes it unique within my collection, and I'm not mad at that. Many of the Enfield rifles that we've inspected from RTI show signs of Indian military service. This bolt going through the forestock of my 1916 example here indicates that Indian service. We call that an Ishi bolt for Ishapur, India. Interestingly enough, this most recent B-grade does not have any such Ishi bolt, so I suppose this rifle is probably excluded from Indian service. We have all kinds of receiver markings here, and I'm not quite sure what most of those are on first glance. I'm guessing several of those are proof marks, and at some point this rifle was updated to a Mk.III star, and I'm sure some of those markings indicate that update. So as always, for me, the most important thing about a Mk.III is whether or not it's a good shooter. I was just taking a look at the bore on this B-grade example, and initially I was very excited because it is far brighter and better looking than the majority of 303s I've encountered with Royal Tiger imports. The bore has a nice little sheen to it, with visibly worn but decent rifling. But after running a patch through it and getting a better look, it appears there may be a bulge in the barrel. And at about this point in the barrel, we can see a well-defined ring, and in terms of shootability, that's one of the worst things you can encounter. The most important contributing factor to accuracy, though, is the condition of the muzzle. Now, on my original B grade here, if we do a very simple bullet muzzle test here, it goes in about that far and has a very thin line of copper poking out. From testing we've done here on the channel before, we know this rifle can encounter keyholes depending on what ammunition you use, but if you're using the right flat-based bullets, it does a pretty decent job. For our most recent B grade here, if we perform that same muzzle test, we have about the same amount of copper sticking out, maybe just a little bit more. So the muzzle on this one might just be shootable, but despite really decent overall bore condition, that ring in the bore might ruin the whole thing. Now, normally I would do a complete disassembly in an unboxing video to get a look at the rifle under the wood line and see what kind of condition it's like on the inside. But with these old No.1 specifically, in order to take the forestock off, you must remove the buttstock, and I simply don't have time for that task in today's video. If this rifle turns out to stabilize bullets and put rounds on paper, I intend to do a complete restoration, do a thorough deep cleaning, replace the handguards, and really make it a good looking rifle. And at that point, I will take you guys along for the ride and we'll do a complete thorough disassembly. For now though, we need to determine whether or not this rifle is even worth investing the time and money into restoring. So let's take it out to the range and see how it shoots. So we've made it out to the range here for some test firing. I did go ahead and complete the process of drilling out the chamber on this rifle. It was extremely dirty with a ton of rust, and I figured we probably wouldn't even be able to chamber around unless I did so. Now, we've covered that process several times on other videos in the past. I will post one for you right up here if you want to see how it's done. I definitely recommend drilling the chamber of pretty much any rifle that comes from Royal Tiger imports. It makes everything so much smoother, and it is literally the easiest way to get the job done. Now, upon closer inspection of this rear sight, we noticed that the elevation graduator is actually turned upside down. Now, I didn't notice it at the tabletop, but when I got it out here and actually shouldered it, I found that the rear sight notch is actually obscured by that upside down elevation adjustment, making it to where you literally can't even see the sights on the rifle. Today's test will be a simple bullet stabilization test anyway. We're not exactly going for groups here. I've brought along a decent variety of 303 loadings for testing. We have the standard 150 grain soft point boat tail from PPU, a 174 grain loading by Remington UMC, and a couple of Cellar and Bellets. The black box is 180 grain, and the final box here is 150 grain. Due to bore condition, the ability of this rifle to stabilize a bullet is already questionable, but we'll give it the best opportunity possible by utilizing a few different loadings. I'm not even going to go through the trouble of doing 2 or 3 shot groups. We're literally shooting 1 round at a time just to see if the bullet stabilizes. We're going to start things out here with our 150 grain PPU. Well, the rifle shot, so at least that's something. And would you look at that? The shot is really low and to the right, but that is a nice clean hole punched in our cardboard there. That is a stabilized bullet at about a 15-yard distance. Next up will be our Remington UMC 174 grain FMJ. Wow, despite not being able to see our rear sight, the point of impact is actually pretty close to the other one. Again, we have a nice, clean, round hole indicating a stabilized bullet. That's a good sign. To be honest, with those first 2 rounds, I'm going to go ahead and say that this rifle merits further exploration to see whether or not it is a restoration candidate. It's certainly doing better than I thought it would with that apparent ring in the barrel. I suppose we'll go ahead and finish out this test with our last couple of loadings. This is the 180 grain soft point from S&B. That ammo smells really weird. We are getting a surprisingly tight group here. This is crazy. Shooting all these different loadings and not even being able to see the rear sight. Another nice, clean impact, even with that big 180 grain projectile, and the last cartridge in our 4-round test, Celler & Bellett's 150 grain soft point loading. Oh boy, that one shot wild as heck. I don't even think it made it on the target at all. Like, where did it go? I think we're gonna have to give that one another shot. Maybe I pulled it, I don't know. That's exactly the kind of wild shooting I was expecting from this rifle. It's a little odd that it happened on our final round, so you know I gotta give it one more shot here. And this time we do have a nice clean round hole just above that S&B 180 grain. You know, it would be really wild if the shot before this one went straight through one of the existing holes on the cardboard here. Well, actually, check this out. That may have been a little difficult to catch, so let's zoom it in and slow it down one more time. Wow, the bullet literally passed directly through the center of a hole that was already in the target. That's crazy, like Robin Hood splitting an arrow, except for this time it was completely on accident. I suppose that's definitive proof that that bullet was most certainly not a keyhole. I said we weren't gonna do multi-shot groups, but I guess I lied, because I'm loading up 3 rounds of PPU 150 grain here, and we're gonna shoot all 3. This time I'm gonna aim above the target. Keep in mind, I'm only using the front sight here. Now that is a huge 3-shot grouping, but all 3 rounds were properly stabilized with the PPU 150 grain. Man, I must say, I am pretty shocked. That is extremely surprising results coming from this Royal Tiger Imports B-grade. I was not at all expecting it to shoot like that. At this point, I've put rounds through 5 or 6 RTI Enfields, the majority of which do demonstrate issues with bullet stabilization. But then we test this beaten up, dogged out 1913 No.1, and it'll shoot anything you put in it and stabilize it just fine. Admittedly at a really short distance, however. I started this video out with the question of, can you get a $250 shooter here in 2025? And crazy enough, it looks like we actually did, despite my preconceived notions. I do believe it's extremely important to stress that the B-grade condition you're getting from RTI here in 2025 is a lot different than the B-grade that we were getting in 2023. It seems that the external condition on the rifles that they're offering continue to get worse and worse as time goes along. Missing our rear handguard, broken front handguard, upside down rear sight, missing safety components, and really rusty internally. Today's B-grade is significantly worse looking than they were a couple years ago. But I must say, if it shoots, I'm happy. And for 250 bucks, man, this one shoots. I think we just may have scored a candidate for full, complete restoration, and that's a really exciting prospect. I guess the next test will be to correct this rear sight, sit down with the rifle and take some nice, slow shots to see how it really groups. But we'll have to tackle that in a future video, because that about does it for this one. I want to know what you guys think about this Royal Tiger Imports B-grade No.1. Is this rifle worth 250 bucks, or is it just another piece of Ethiopian junk? Drop me a comment with your opinion. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, hit it with a thumbs up to help it out with the Google algorithm. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future military surplus firearms content. And I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.